Hi everyone, welcome to Turn 2. So now we're going to look at natural resources. So this topic is themed about saving Earth. Previously we've talked about what the world would look like if we didn't fix these problems. What would an apocalyptic Earth sort of give us in terms of the materials? We talked about how hard it is just to filter water, how hard it is to get water, and even the separation techniques. Having to do that all the time is a pain. It's a lot easier if we can just fix things and let nature purify things for us. So this section is all about saving Earth, how we can fix it with modern technology. We're going to do a lot of discussion about the future of things, the future of energy, the future of farming, of food, all this kind of stuff. So it's a very sort of on the edge of technology and new age sort of concept. So to get the theme of it, I'm going to start you off with a little intro video. And throughout this whole course, you'll see snippets of this. This is from the 2040 documentary. And it's all about the possible solutions for stuff to do with the environment and about our natural resources.
The ice sheet is now melting faster than the scientists predicted. We're seeing large waterfalls pouring off the side of the ice. It's an alarming acceleration.
The need to address this is so urgent that it often overwhelms me. The simplest way I can explain our current predicament is to briefly channel my Year 9 science teacher and pretend our house is the planet.
Carbon is a miraculous building block. And for millions of years, our planet has been part of a natural carbon cycle. Some gets released, some gets stored, and if these things are balanced, then equilibrium is maintained. But since the Industrial Revolution, we've broken the balance and have been dramatically increasing the release of the Earth's stored carbon into our atmosphere. For hundreds of thousands of years, we hovered between about 180 and 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But since the Industrial Revolution, that number has shot up over 40% to more than 400 parts per million, trapping heat in our atmosphere. More than 90% of the excess heat being trapped is absorbed by our oceans. The oceans also absorb much of the extra carbon dioxide, and so are now around 30% more acidic than they were 150 years ago. And this is impacting on biodiversity, as many sea creatures, such as oysters or clams, are struggling to make their shells. But the increased heat and overall energy in the system also leads to more intense weather events. Hotter air can hold more moisture, so rainfalls, storms, hurricanes, floods, even snowfalls can become heavier. It is true that the climate has always been changing. It just hasn't changed this rapidly in at least 50 million years. Unfortunately, the increasing heat also means that our polar caps and glaciers are rapidly melting, which causes sea level rise that threatens hundreds of millions of people in coastal cities. The Earth is our collective home that we're actually renting from future generations. So we need to not only rapidly reduce our emissions, but also find ways to sequester or draw down the excess carbon dioxide that has already been put into the system. Many scientists believe that getting down to 350 parts per million would be a terrific goal. So I think we're all pretty aware that when it comes to predictions of the future, they're almost entirely negative at the moment. Anytime you open your news feed or social media, there's some kind of doom and gloom story about the future of our environment. And as a father, I think there's room for a different story. A story that focuses on the solutions to some of these problems. So my plan is to go out and find some of these solutions and then create a vision of a different future for our daughter. What about, I want to show her what the world would look like if the solutions I find were implemented today. So what would the world look like in 2040 if we just embrace the best that already exists? That's my only rule. Everything I show her in this 2040 has to exist today in some form. I can't make it up. I'm calling it an exercise in fact-based dreaming.
Okay, so that's your little intro that sort of ties in what we're talking about today. It's all about how we can help the environment, what are the resources. We're going to talk a lot about energy, and there's going to be a lot of sort of engineering opportunities for you guys to really develop something that doesn't exist and come up with these ideas of how we could fix some of these problems. So the first thing is, what is a resource?
A resource is anything we need or use. Look around you. Nearly anything you can pick out is a resource. For example, smartphones are resources because you can use them to call your friends, check the weather forecast, or play games. They're made up from a whole range of plastic, metal, and glass parts. Resources, which are made out of other materials, are called synthetic. But where do the materials come from? If you trace them back far enough, you'll always end up with things that we find in the natural world. These are called natural resources. Examples include the air we breathe, the water we drink, as well as wood, chickens, sand, and gold. When you start thinking about it, we depend on natural resources for nearly everything.
So a resource is anything that we need or use, basically. So if you need it and you need to use it and I need to use it, it's a resource. It can be gathered from a variety of sources, and it can be both renewable and non-renewable. And we'll talk about that later, what those two things mean. So throughout this whole module, you're going to need to write down any terms or new words in your science book. So not on your computer, in your science book. Anything that is particularly important, I'm going to bold in red. So you'll see sections that are red. A resource, you need to know this. So a resource is anything that we need or use. That's a definition, very important. Anything else within these modules that you think, oh, that's probably good to know, write that down, pause the video, make a note in your book, and then keep going. Or you can go through the whole video, then at the end come back and replay, just quickly skipping through, and then take notes as you want. It's however you want to do it. But make sure that you're writing these things in your science book, because you're going to need them for the test, and these are the important pieces you need to know. So natural versus synthetic. A natural resource is something that exists without it needing to be made. So we don't have to construct this. We can just go out and find it naturally, which means it's out in the environment somewhere. An example of this could be air. We definitely need that to breathe. The water that we drink is a natural resource. Soil, trees, forests, wildlife is just out there. That's natural resources. Coal, petroleum, gas, and other minerals. These are all examples of a natural resource. It doesn't have to be made. However, when we look at a synthetic resource, this is something that is made. So it's a combination of different resources. It could be chemicals. Some examples we've got here are things like polyester, which is what your shirts are made of, nylons, plastic, cardboard, a brick, and any kind of medicine. So these are made up of lots of different things. And a bit like when we talked about mixtures, you can break down something into mixtures and then separate them out and figure out what are the pure substances. It's kind of similar with our resources. A synthetic is made up of lots of different resources, and if we go all the way down to what was the bare essentials, we generally find it to be some sort of a natural product. We can have two different styles here too. We can have an animal product resource, and this can be things like a steak, your leather or suede shoes. You can have honey. All of these are natural resources except for the leather, because we had to make that, right? This is not just gone out in the wild and found it. yes, it's kind of naturally found, but I would say we've done processes to it. We've added chemicals to it. But these are animal products. On the other hand, we can have plant products as a type of resource. So things like the cotton plant, which is where we make a lot of clothing, the olive tree to get our oil, and the pine tree, which we use in a lot of furniture. So we can have plant-based resources and we can have animal-based resources. What I want you to do now is I want you to think about what are the top 3 essential resources. So what are the 3 most important? And then I want you to say, or think about if you were stuck out in the middle of nowhere and you had to survive off only 3 resources. What would they be? So justify your answer. So if you're interpreting this as it's going to be a long time, I need these resources. Or you might say, I just want to survive for a period of time. These are my resources. It's entirely up to you, but you have to be able to justify it. So this is going to be a bit of a debate. I want you to post this in our chat page and everyone can discuss it. You can debate with each other. So you feel free to comment on someone else's and be like, why do you think that? I think this would be better. Have those discussions. But I want you to really think about what are the 3 most important resources that we could possibly have. Once you've done that, go to the link. This will be both in the actual task that follows, but there's a link to a style quiz on resources. So have a go at that first. Go through the style quiz on resources. And then the second thing, which if you don't finish in this lesson will become homework, and it must be done before the next lesson, is do the quizzes on natural and synthetic resources. So we'll do a bunch of these quizzes throughout the course, but go to that link. It's a quizzes page. You should just be able to do this in your own time, and it's going to rank you against the other class. So once you've done that, post your quiz results. So just take a screenshot of the page, post that on the Canvas section. You'll notice in Canvas, under the assessment task, there's a whole bunch of quizzes assessments now, and they're an upload style file. So take a screenshot of your final score once you finish the quiz, upload that to Canvas, and then you're done for this lesson.